back to our award-winning podcast, Smart People Travel Wise. I'm your host, Tennie Sumague, coming to you from Queens, New York. I'm enjoying this day off this Tuesday where I am adhering to the term YOLO, something that I just found out recently, meaning you only live once. And no, it's not a chocolate drink or a clothing brand. So this month's podcast theme will center around YOLO, as me and my guests will discuss destinations where every traveler should visit once in their lifetime. But before we get started, as a reminder, for all our viewers, if you are watching this live, please hashtag live. And if you are watching this on replay, hashtag replay. Share where you're watching from so we can acknowledge all of you. And don't forget to catch our show on various social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Amazon Fire, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Or download the app PHLV Radio, available on all iOS and Android devices. So today's guest is from up north, our neighboring country, Canada. He's a handsome Torontonian who suits the heart and soul of his viewers in his podcast, Heart and Soul. He's also one of my many friends that I have in the greater Toronto area. He's a great conversationalist, someone you could hang out with at Tim Hortons for a long period of time, along with their bowl of cream of broccoli. Please smash those heart buttons and give a welcome to Mr. Martin Zerrudo.
Martin. Hi, Tennie, how are you?
What's up, It's been a long time.
How's it going? Yeah, it's been a minute, but happy to hear you're doing well. These last 2 years have been a little insane, but good to see you're doing well.
I'm glad to see you doing well, and I hope you and your wife, Erica, are happily ever after.
Yeah, I guess you could say
Canada.
that.
I know she's American, and she is probably missing those Georgia peaches, huh?
Yeah, we were just there a couple of weeks ago, but yeah, we've been in Toronto now for about 3 years. Well, we've been married for 3 years, so she moved here, so she's been here for about 3 years now, and I think you could say Toronto's has become her home now. I'd like to hope. I'd like to think that.
You'd like to think, and I love Toronto. I mean, Toronto and New York have similarities in terms of multiculturalism, but definitely. I always say Canadians are a lot nicer than New Yorkers, and I haven't been to Toronto in ages, and I think, the last time I went to Toronto was actually around this time in 2019, and we're gonna first talk.
Nice.
Yeah. It was during the NBA Finals, and that was probably one of my most memorable
memories.
Great memories in the Toronto area, and also as a freelance sports journalist, of course, because your hometown Raptors won their first
2019. That's right.
NBA title, and I did remember reaching out to you, but I think you were out of town during that time. But it was actually when I went there, and I always say Toronto is very clean, very genuinely friendly people. But around that time during the NBA Finals, they were just super, super friendly. I think the excitement of the NBA Finals, and I've never seen every restaurant wanting Kawhi Leonard
to stay.
I mean, he said, please, Kawhi,
Kawhi and dine.
Kawhi and dine. That was it. In every restaurant, Kawhi and dine. That was one of the most hilarious things I saw.
Didn't work though, unfortunately.
I know. And unfortunately, he's back in his hometown, but I know he's one of those most well-loved athletes in Toronto.
Yeah, definitely.
And let's talk about the sports scene, because while we're on the topic of the Raptors, how big of a Raptors fan are you?
It's funny, when we immigrated here to Toronto, I want to say 1988, I was 2 years old, right? And at that time, growing up in Toronto, the Maple Leafs really were the biggest team for me. The Raptors hadn't been founded yet, so really the Maple Leafs or the Blue Jays. And the Toronto Blue Jays, obviously, they won the World Series in the 90s twice, which was fantastic. And then as you get introduced to hockey growing up, you learn about the Maple Leafs, and they've won so many Stanley Cups back in the day. So I was very much a Maple Leafs fan, a little bit of a Blue Jays fan growing up. And then the Raptors came to town. We established the first Canadian basketball team, and it was a very significant milestone, not just for Toronto, but for Canadians. Fun fact, Canadian invented the game of basketball. James Naismith, even though he was in the States when it was invented by a Canadian. He opened up I think it was like a peach basket, and they cut the hole underneath, and then that's how basketball was born, right? So, but David Stoudemire to Tracy McGrady, and then Vince Carter, and then eventually Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan, and then eventually Kawhi after that. So yeah, being a Raptors fan and then introducing the whole promotional aspect of We the North was such a huge milestone moment for everybody in Toronto. That's when everybody, I guess you could say, jumped on the bandwagon being a Toronto Raptors fan. I know for myself, I wasn't as diehard a Raptors fan until recently. I want to say the last maybe 4 or 5 years. But man, what a time to be a Raptors fan, especially when it really peaked around 2019. Yeah, that We the North campaign really encapsulated what it meant to be a basketball fan as a Canadian and as a Torontonian, because, we're not known for basketball. We're known for hockey. We're known for being cold weather up north, not really making it that far because, LeBron James always dominated the Eastern Conference while he was in Cleveland. So we never really had a shot to make it significantly deep into the playoffs because of him. But then he moved to the Lakers, opened things up a little bit, and we made it. We made it all the way up, and a couple of bumps and bruises on the other team's end. And we made it to the finals and we won. So it was definitely a crazy moment for Torontonians. I remember going downtown. I had sprained my ankle, but I was like, a friend of mine was like, should we go downtown and celebrate? And I'm like, if there's like a riot or something, I'll probably end up like breaking my foot because I can't go anywhere because my ankle's sprained. But I'm like, you know what? Let's go anyway. So it was like 4 a.m, and we just decided, okay, let's go downtown and celebrate and see the madness. And it was madness. There was like a bus that was destroyed. People were singing a national anthem on top of it. It wasn't chaos in a rioting sense, but definitely it was pretty intense. Yeah, that was my 2019 summer, and we all were hoping Kawhi would stay, and he obviously didn't. But yeah, it was great times.
Yeah, I remember covering Game 2, and everywhere what is that, Jurassic Park? Is that what they call it?
Yeah, Jurassic Park in front of Scotiabank Arena was where people would stand and watch the games. They didn't have any tickets, and it was pandemonium there every single game. Even away games, people would go there and watch, right? Yeah, man. I'm thinking back, it was like, what, 3 years ago now?
Yeah, it's 3 years ago. I remember
Good times.
I was interviewing fans, and there were a lot of Filipinos there, Martin. And I remember
represent,
Yeah. I remember interviewing one Filipino who's actually from Vancouver, who came, who migrated to Toronto maybe a year or two prior, and he was going nuts. And he was a Golden State Warriors fan until the Raptors came to Raptors made it to the NBA Finals. And I remember interviewing him, and he was just like, in Tagalog, he's like, KD, and I think it was Kevin Durant it was his last season in Golden State, and he was already learning him. KD, sign with the Raptors with Kawhi, mabuhay.
Mabuhay.
They're like, and he was
sounds like us.
Yeah, that's typical Filipino, and the Warriors that's a lot of Filipinos root for the Warriors, obviously, because San Francisco, and he was really promoting the Raptors to the Philippines, saying like, you should all be Raptor fans. Yeah, it was amazing how just that championship run brought the Filipino community together.
It really did.
That
in a lot of weird ways, but it still did do that.
Let's
There's
segue
this
to
one.
that.
There's this one meme of this guy who were like, they were interviewing him and he's wearing a Raptors jersey, he's Filipino, and he goes, "Let's go Raptors," right? And he claps. He's got the thickest accent, and we're like, you know what? That's exactly what we sound like. No problem with that. Let's go Raptors. Why not?
Raptors, not raftors. Like, let's go
Raptors.
raftors.
Why not? That's what we sound like. Exactly.
I mean, you mentioned you were a hockey fan. I know your brother Marco is a huge Toronto
Huge,
Maple Leafs
huge Leafs fan for sure.
fan. And I know, how long has it been since they've made it to the
Won a
Stanley?
Stanley Cup. Oh my gosh, like 1967. It's been like what, 40, 50, 60, 60 years or so, plus minus. I don't know. We had a chance this year, but of course we failed. We were up against Tampa Bay, the defending back-to-back
yeah.
Stanley Cup champions, and then of course we lost. So
Well, my Rangers
know.
are against the defending champions, and as of now, I think they're up or tied, but they have a chance to dethrone the defending Stanley Cup
Oh,
champions.
there you go. There you go. If only we could be so lucky.
Yeah. Well, Toronto is lucky in many ways, and Toronto
Yes,
is
I
actually the
suppose.
home of the National Hockey Museum. Have
It
you
is.
been there, Martin?
I have been to the Hockey Hall of Fame, and yeah, there's such a storied history around the sport. Everybody around the world knows that Canada obviously dominates the sport. Winter Olympics, and our best players in the NHL are always Canadian, and so for the most part, so yeah, hockey is something that binds us. We learn it growing up in school. You play it. My brother wanted to be a hockey, like a goalie. He wanted to play like a NHL goalie. That was one of his early goals. So there's actually a newspaper clipping of him and like a paper, like community Pee Wee hockey or something like that, and he's there dressed up as in all of his gear. So yeah, it's a big part of our childhood for most Canadians, immigrants and non-immigrants, and all kinds of cultures.
Yeah, there's so many phenomenal Canadian hockey players. I could name a bunch of them: Wayne Gretzky, Mark Messier,
yeah, Mario Lemieux,
John
everybody.
Tavares playing for not the Raptors, the Maple Leafs.
John
He used to be the
Tavares.
Islanders. Yes.
He used to be. Tavares used to be on our team. I think he still is. I'm not sure. I haven't been keeping up. My brother would be like,
And Mighty Ducks is one of my favorite all-time sports movies.
Oh, there you go. D1, 2, and 3. How can you not love that show?
Emilio Estevez and a Canadian himself, Joshua Jackson.
That's right. Great show. Love that show.
And
great love with the movies and the show on Disney Plus. Sorry.
Oh yes. And how about the Blue Jays? By the way, I know the Blue Jays were a hit in the 90s.
We made a couple of pretty significant runs in the playoffs these last couple of years. So we're in there. We're always in the running. I would want to say we're like prime contenders every single year, but we do well enough to warrant the fandom, which is more than you can say for the Leafs sometimes, because whether they overperform or underperform, the Leafs are always going to have sold out games. So but the Blue Jays keep us earnest, and I appreciate what they do. Totally.
What else is interesting in the sports world in Toronto? Any other fascinating
Toronto sports. Toronto FC, right? Our soccer team gets some love as well. We also have I think the Toronto Rock, which is our lacrosse team. So lacrosse obviously is the actual national sport of Canada. A lot of people think it's hockey, but it's actually lacrosse. Yeah, no, we have a lot of sports happening here. Curling, if anybody's a big fan of curling. But yeah, no, we play a lot of sports. Right? No. Yeah, no, we have a lot of different sports, but I want to say the big three definitely are the Blue Jays, the Raptors, and the Leafs.
Let's move on to the arts and culture scene in Toronto. Like New York, Toronto is very diverse, multicultural. And Martin, one of my favorite Instagrammable places that I love to take pictures at is Graffiti Alley. I think I have a lot of pictures. Where exactly is Graffiti Alley? I don't know what
So it's a
neighborhood.
section downtown. I'll give you the exact street. 1 second.
And
It's
that's
been a
where
while since
Google
I've been
comes
there.
in.
I know. I've been there many times. I actually live downtown, but I'll give you the exact address. It's actually from Spadina and Richmond. There's a street between Spadina and Richmond called Graffiti Alley. It's actually called Graffiti Alley. Between Spadina and Augusta. It's pretty cool. It's like a little bit west of downtown, of the downtown core. But yeah, no, it's a great place to take pictures. But it's just one of many different streets in Toronto. You know, Kensington Market, you know, Chinatown, Koreatown, Old Toronto, Financial District, Harborfront, City Hall. There's so many, you know, Queen West, Queen East, lots of really fantastic places around Toronto.
What is your favorite neighborhood in Toronto?
You know, it's gonna a little cliche, I guess, because I grew up here when I was, I want to say maybe 4. I moved to downtown Toronto in this area called St. Jamestown, which is like Wellesley and Parliament. It's close to Bloor Street, which is like one of the main streets. And right beside St. Jamestown is a place called Cabbage Town. And, you know, a couple blocks away is like Yorkville, a couple blocks away is like Yonge and Dundas. So you're really surrounded by all the key areas of the downtown core. And I love this area. That's where I live right now. I ended up moving back into a condo in the area in my 30s. And I just love how everything is walking distance. People are nice. You have access to a lot of different, you know, authentic places to eat, you know, but also really nice malls and places to shop like Eaton Center. So yeah, I'd probably have to say being in this area, this like Cabbage Town-ish, you know, Church and Wellesley, Yorkville, Yonge and Bloor area. I'm a big fan, 100%.
I was wondering, Yonge? Is it Yonge or Young?
Young. It's not spelled traditionally like how you would spell young. It's Yonge, but yeah, Yonge. That's an interesting way of pronouncing it, but it's Young Street.
You say Yonge,
Yonge.
and I
We
say
say,
Young.
yeah. But
Like
we say
tomato
Young
and
Street.
tomato, right?
Yeah. We have a lot of really unique, like I live on Bloor and Sherbourne, but it's pronounced Sherbourne, like the Bourne Supremacy or the Bourne Ultimatum, Bourne Supremacy, all the other Bourne movies. The Bourne Identity. Yeah, the Matt Damon. Yeah, so but it's called Sherbourne. We say Sherbourne, but it's spelled Sherbourne. Nobody really says Sherbourne.
Where else? I know I love. What do I remember about Toronto? I've been to Toronto probably like 8 times. And I probably have done it. It's unlike DC where I do the same thing. I do the monuments, the Smithsonian Museum. But with Toronto, I tend to just navigate in different neighborhoods. One of my favorite neighborhoods is Kensington. Kensington.
Totally.
And I'm gonna tell you, St. Lawrence, I believe it's St. Lawrence Market. That's the first time I had Portuguese tarts. And I guess we'll talk about food, because food, everyone loves food. And do you consider yourself a foodie?
Oh man, I guess these last 2 years under the pandemic, I think everybody became a foodie just because that's all you can really do is just order food and eat it at home. But yeah, no, I definitely love eating. Although I will say, I'll fully admit, I'm not as adventurous, you know, like palate wise as others. I love me, you know, my fish and chips and Chick-fil-A and everything like that. So I definitely can. Oh, I love Chick-fil-A, 100%.
That's not Canadian. That's where your wife is from. That's from Georgia.
I know. It's Southern, but we have 2 now. I think we have 3. So like, yeah, we're on the up and up. But no, in terms of food, shawarma, Osmos, which is like our version of halal guys, fantastic. What else do we have here? You know, Burger Priest, which is our version of Shake Shack, poutine, everybody's heard of before, beaver tail. Oh man, duck pizza. I don't know if you ever had that.
Oh wow, duck pizza. That's interesting.
Yeah. Duck
Chinatown.
pizza. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of and you know, and like different kinds of desserts. We have a huge like Asian dessert scene, you know, Japanese desserts, Korean desserts, Chinese desserts, bubble tea, all kinds of ice cream and waffles and oh man, what's not to like? Just so much food.
Food, glorious food. I do, however, you have a big Jamaican Caribbean community out in Toronto. And I think
Hmm.
um, I've had jerk chicken in Toronto, and I actually like your jerk. I love jerks.
Oh yeah. No, jerk chicken is huge here. You know, like the Caribbean scene and like Dominican food and like Trinidadian food, just West Indian food in general. Guyanese food is huge community here and a lot of different authentic places for you to eat. If that's your go-to, you're definitely not going to run out of options for sure.
We're going to move on to from food, Martin, to what you love about Toronto. In your own words, Martin, what do you love about the city of Toronto?
Um, you know, for myself, I'm a pretty religious person, and you know, Toronto uh, is where my faith grew, where I found the truth and was able to be part of the Church of Christ and was able to learn about God and Christ and really explore, you know, the spiritual side of who I am. And what I love about Toronto is it's such an open city for that kind of a journey. Whatever religion or spiritual journey you may be on, you know, it's a city that embraces all cultures and all peoples to be able to have that opportunity. I remember as a kid, you know, the chapel was so far from where we lived, but Toronto had the infrastructure to take a train to get to worship service. You know, I remember in my teens needing to go to different church activities, and Toronto had different buses that allowed me to go to those activities. You know, now that in my 30s, I've seen the church grow so much here in Toronto with so many different places of worship and houses of worship, all of which are accessible 20, 30 minutes by car. And the growth of that spiritual community here in Toronto really is what I love so much about this city, is that it helped facilitate that growth. You know, different activities, we're ordering food, we're having different kinds of food, Filipino food, Chinese food, you know, Caucasian food, Italian food, Jamaican food, all kinds of food was accessible in all these different church activities and was brought by different guests and different people who would attend and join us in these gatherings. That's what I remember. My whole life growing up in Toronto was such a mosaic of cultures and peoples coming together in the pursuit of bettering themselves. Um, yeah, and it didn't hurt that it was clean, it was relatively safe, and yeah, just such conducive to family life and to embracing people's journeys to wherever they want to be.
Spirituality plays a big role too in my life. And like without spirituality, you wouldn't have your basic needs,
Hmm.
your friends. For me, the opportunity to travel, for this is a travel podcast,
Yeah,
right? A lot of your blessings come from what your faith and what you believe in. But
yeah,
aside from
absolutely.
spirituality, which plays a huge part in your life growing up in Toronto, what else defined? What about Toronto that shaped you and your life aside from spirituality?
What I love is it. I always felt, and I know you're from New York, right? It's like I always felt like Toronto is like New York, just a little bit cleaner and a little less people. You know what I mean? Like we have access to the latest things, whether it's fashion or movies or entertainment or different trends and different foods. Toronto is probably, you know, the biggest um and most uh I don't want to say anything derogatory to the other Canadian cities, but I want to say Toronto's is up there. I'd probably say is the biggest city. So it's our metropolis. And so it has access to so many things that other Canadian cities don't and other American cities don't. And so I'm very, very fortunate and privileged to live in a city that has access to, our population over 4 million people of so many different things in whatever you want to enjoy: food, sports, arts, culture. The city is teeming with life and opportunity, all within a walking distance or a train ride away. And it's relatively clean. And there's no mounds of garbage that, pollute the streets. And there's not an influx of like, a significant amount of homeless or crazy people on the streets. And I'm not saying that to demean or, to be derogatory to people who are less
You're just
fortunate, but I'm just
describing New
saying.
York right now, Martin.
Yeah, I'm just saying. And I was in New York last month. So, and I enjoy New York. It's like Toronto on steroids because it's like 10 times more people, 10 times more buildings, 10 times more things to do. But that can also be very overwhelming. So I feel like for anyone who's ever been to New York, if you want something a little bit more toned down, like it's still definitely a city, there's still definitely millions of people, and there's still lots of things to do. It's just a little bit more spaced out, a little bit cleaner, maybe a little bit safer, and that's pretty much it. Culturally, I think New York and Toronto are very, very similar in terms of having so many different ethnicities and different walks of life coming together to, pursue your dreams. And New York has such a distinct concrete jungle. We're New Yorkers. And then now Toronto in and of itself, the six, we the North, we have that as well.
And it's a good thing that you brought up the similarities of Toronto to New York. And there are a lot of similarities in terms of it's a metropolis. There's like I've mentioned, multiculturalism with food, the people. But Toronto is a lot cleaner. I think Toronto is probably the same size as Brooklyn, I would say, the same amount of people. And yes, you mentioned it's a lot cleaner, but you also mentioned that it had, like New York, there's just access to everything. Everything is, you could, I would say, like in New York, it's easy to get to a Starbucks. There's a Starbucks in every block in the city, or basically you have, everywhere that you go in the city. It's probably like that with Tim Hortons.
Yeah, definitely. Tim Hortons is everywhere. It's like your Dunkin', right? And people go to Tim Hortons, you'll have an ice cap, which we'll call an ice cappuccino, which is like a cappuccino. It's like a coffee slushy. Everybody loves it. You'll have a double, which is like, oh, are you still there? I lost you.
Oh,
are you still there?
I hear you. I am here.
Got it. There you go. And yeah, when it comes to Tim Hortons, you have a double, which is like 2 milk, 2 sugar. Right. So, then Tim Bits, which I think came out before donut holes. So we claim that one. We started that trend before Dunkin' did. Timbits, yeah.
Yeah, well, Dunkin's is Munchkins.
Munchkins, that's it. Sorry. We came out before the Munchkins. I may be wrong, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Speaking of Tim Hortons, let's do a comparison.
Sure.
Tim Hortons, Dunkin' Donuts. What do you prefer? And you've had both. And I'll tell
100% you Tim Hortons, for sure. There is no comparison at all.
What I like about Tim Hortons is that in your tidbits, I think my favorite tidbit is, I think it's the sour cream glazed.
Sourdough glazed. Oh, yes. Gosh. So good. Sourdough glazed Timbit is the best. That is also my favorite. 100%.
And they don't make that. No, Dunkin' Donuts doesn't make that. And I like Tim Hortons. I do like Tim Hortons. I'm not a coffee drinker, but I always drink their ice cap, frap, whatever
the ice cap. Yeah, that's the way to go. If you don't like coffee, we also have a pretty good steep tea at Tim Hortons. I don't drink coffee either. That's my go-to drink, is the steep tea. But aside from the food, aside from the sports, if you find yourself in Toronto, definitely got to hit up CN Tower. Got to hit up the Rogers Center, which is what we call, what used to be called Sky Dome. If you ever watched the movie Turning Red, I highly recommend you watch that movie. You get a crash course in like 1980s, 1990s Toronto. What else should you see? Toronto Island. You can take a ferry go to the island, and you can see a beautiful shot of the skyline. Yeah, there's so many things to do in Toronto for sure, but definitely CN Tower is one of them. You want to make sure you get it to hit up that spot.
Oh my, CN Tower, Martin. I've seen it so many times, but I've never been inside it. What am I missing? What?
Well, the thing is, right, like if you're not used to living in a city with high rises, like the view is definitely stunning and breathtaking because you're so high up and the elevator is see-through. Like you can see the glass as you go up, so it gets pretty high, and they have a revolving restaurant at the very top of the tower. So you see the whole skyline. You get to see the whole, make out of the city. And at one point, it was the tallest freestanding tower until, like, I think a building in Dubai or Malaysia, like crushed that out of yeah, like the Burj, is it the Burj Khalifa? Just
That's
blew it out of the wall.
Dubai.
That's Dubai.
Malaysia is what is that? Petronas Towers.
The Petronas Towers, exactly, with the bridge in between, right? Yeah. So it's our little piece of like wonder. Like, hey, look, we have a really tall tower too. It's like the Sears Tower or like the Space Needle in Seattle, but it's pretty high. It's pretty high, and you can even walk on the outside. It's called I think it's called the Skywalk or edge walk, and they'll strap you into the building, but you can lean over the CN Tower and like we're like 150 feet in the air, 150 stories in the air, something like that. So it's pretty insane. Yeah, so if you ever get a chance to visit Toronto, obviously the spots you want to hit up outside of all the different foods and places to see is CN Tower. You want to go all the way up there, take a view of the whole city, and see all of its splendor, all of the six, and all of its concrete splendor. And there's a restaurant all the way at the top. It's like 150 stories up, so you're pretty high. You can even do, I think it's called an edge walk, where they harness you up to the side of the CN Tower and you can look over the edge, which is pretty insane if you have the if you're into that kind of thing. Also, of course, Rogers Center, which is what we used to call Sky Dome. If you watch the movie Turning Red, it's a pretty cool snapshot of Toronto in the 90s. Yeah, you catch a Blue Jays game, Scotiabank Arena, catch a Raptors game if the season is going. Take a ferry across to Toronto Island so you can see a really awesome view of the Toronto skyline. There's really so many things that you can do in Toronto, and 1 day or 2 days or 3 days is not enough. And hopefully, if you get a chance to visit, hit me up and I'll take you around.
Yeah. So where can we reach you, Mr. Martin Zerrudo? What's your Instagram handle?
Oh, I do have Instagram. But I guess you can reach me at _smarts on Instagram. I'm not usually I don't post as often, but if you do, yeah, just hit me up on Instagram, I guess, and then message me and tell me you're in town, I guess. We talk all about Toronto, no problem.
It's all about Toronto in the sixth, right? Anything else you would like to add? Maybe how long? Here's one thing. I've been to Toronto so many times, and I always contact you whenever I'm there. But how long should a traveler stay in Toronto? What's ideal?
You should totally stay for at least 3 to 5 days. At least. There's so many things to do, honestly. And it's not hard to access all of them. They're relatively close. So in 3 days to 5 days, you can reach the whole city end to end, top to bottom, and really make the most out of your trip for sure. And then if you want to go a little bit outside of Toronto, then we're start talking about cottage country. You want to go fishing, you want to go to Niagara Falls, you want to go to Thousand Islands. There's a lot of things you can do outside of Toronto as well. So if you want to do 5 days, then we're talking like Greater Toronto Area, the GTA. Now we're having a conversation, but there's definitely a lot of things to do. We haven't even talked about, Scarborough and all the different food that you can get there, Markham and all the different Chinese and Asian and Japanese, Korean food. There's so many things you can do, Toronto and all the different, smaller cities around it for sure.
I think doing an episode just solely on the Greater Toronto Area things.
Yeah.
We gotta do another episode.
For sure.
Martin.
Absolutely.
So thank you again for coming on. And to all our viewers, you could hit Martin at @smarts on Instagram, or you can reach me and I could always Telegram message him and let him know that you will be going to Toronto for 3 or 5 days and hit
Absolutely.
up Tower and all the remarkable Instagrammable places that she could do in the 6. Thank you again, Martin.
Thanks, Tennie.
And thank you to our viewers, because without your support, this would be impossible. Tune in again every Tuesday, 12 Eastern time, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 12 noon Pacific, for another episode of Smart People Travel Wise. I'm your host, Tennie Sumague. See you next time.